So I know we've covered framing a container before. Most of the time they're done. I wanted to show this guy to you guys before we get the rest of the frames, and we've got two sides in here, and show you how we do that just kind of from the ground up. So welcome back to our channel. We use a 2x3 studs. That gives you another inch on both sides in the container, so 2 inches of more space. There's no reason not to use 2x3s in these, in my opinion. And we run them this way. We don't run them this way because they want to bow around when you run them flat. And so we run them this way. That's the way they're supposed to be run, and they stay a lot flatter. And if you're doing pretty much any interior wall finish, sheetrock, shiplap, if these are bowed or kicking around at all, it just looks like trash. So we build an 8-foot frame, and you can see where they're tied together here. Another 8-foot frame, and then we've got these little baby, they're about 31.5 inches is what they end up being on the ends. So we'll have the same frames over here repeated. We will frame around the door, and then our ceiling frames will go butt up to these. They'll have a top and bottom plate or side plates, whatever you want to call them, the ceiling frames. They will butt to that one and butt to that one very tightly, kicking these frames out, and then all that screws together, and you've got a really strong, nice frame. We like to build 8-foot frames. We don't like to build a frame up to the edge of the window and then a custom frame under here, because it throws all your alignment off for all your studs. And so this is the way we like to do it. We just kick out a bunch of 8-foot frames and a couple little custom ones that are always the same on the end. And you can see that 2x4 there. I mean, it's way wider than these 2x3s. The only problem is when you frame a high cube container, you need to bring the ceiling down because they don't make 10-foot 2x3s. You can probably have a mill cut them. So we rip down 2x6s to get our 2x3s in a high cube container, or you could run 2x4s. I just don't like sacrificing any space in an already skinny container. So once we have our frames, sorry about that, sandwiched in here, we know these frames, let me go back to here. These frames just get sandwiched out to this bar up here. Well, you can see it's about a 1/2 inch that your corrugation is inside of that top bar of the container. So your frame ends up being that same distance away from the wall down here. And that works out perfect, and that keeps you perfectly parallel to the container and level. And then that allows you to run your wiring behind here, even where the stud is hitting close to corrugation, you still got room behind there to run your wires. So, and then you got plenty of room for spray foam insulation. We do not use fiberglass. So what I want to show you is when you cut out the sidewalls of a container, we're going to put a window in here, and we've got a window there, and we've already got the walk door welded in. This container moves around. So why I like doing the frames first is because once we get these frames all screwed in, it gives us a good reference point right here for where our window frame is going to be placed. If you're trying to place this window frame in the open, you're going to be pushing this corrugation around and trying to get everything straightened back up. You see this corrugation is kicked in on this stud right now. So when these studs are secured in the container, we know this is perfectly parallel to the container. We can come in here with our window frame, put it against the wood frame, get it positioned correctly laterally and up and down to where it's level with the container. Then we tack it, check it, and we know it's placed perfectly perpendicular to the container. I see a lot of container manufacturers online, and I'll see their window frames are cocked this way, or in or out, or they don't straighten up the corrugation. So what we're going to do is get this frame in here, tack it, and we're going to push this corrugation back out to where it should be, and then tack it there, and then full weld it. And that gets everything perfectly square and straight. There are obviously a lot of ways to do all of this, but this is the way I like to do it. I can't stand anything being a 1/16 of an inch off anywhere for any reason. So back to the frames. Your back frame, I set it inside those corner post castings and flush with the front of that corner post casting. That way you've got a nice straight surface right there, and your ceiling frame comes and meets that. You've got a nice corner for your interior finish. What that does is kicks the back wall out a little bit. So you eat a couple inches of space in the back of the container, but we usually run a mini split back here, and so that works out perfect because we hide our lines behind this frame. And so that gives us a perfect amount of space back here for mini split lines. And so that's really my favorite way to do that. So your ceiling frame will go right here, butted up next to that, and then all your studs, because that ceiling frame is starting at the same spot as this side frame, all your studs are on 16 centers and your ceiling frame lines up perfectly. On our door frame, we're going to build an 8-foot frame. We're going to leave the middle 3 studs out, bring it in here. So we're going to have 2 studs over here, 2 studs over here. We'll bring it in here and mark the bottom plate. Where the door is, take it back out, and then put studs in on the sides of the doors. On the windows, once we get the window frames in, we will just come by and mark it and cut. And since our window frame is not protruding into our interior framing, we don't have to worry about the hot window frame because those get really hot in the summer to the touch. It's easier to case the window out with interior finishes if it's not protruding into the interior frame. So that's another advantage of setting your window frames after your interior frames if you're doing an interior finish. So I hope some of this kind of showed you a couple tricks. Here's a walk door. We build these here. Got the stop on it, and those are pretty funky to keep straight when you weld in, and you can't really continuously weld these. I'll go show this to you on the outside. Your corrugation will start warping if you just go wild, which is another problem I see with a bunch of guys on YouTube, is they just keep running the weld the whole time and the corrugation starts kicking around. So you can see our welding there. So we'll weld like a foot, take a break, gap it out, whatever we can, let that corrugation cool down, and keep this corrugation straight. And yes, we usually pull these graphics and stuff off, and then prime it, touch up paint. With our paint, we usually come out to like a corrugation here or here and blend it. And we've got paint that matches really well. Like I said, we get that from Sherwin-Williams. These doors are a lot of work. You've got this whole apparatus, you've got your hardware, you've got paint, you've got your threshold. That's all got to be set perfectly. You also have a seal that goes on the jamb of the door, and that all has to fit perfectly. You can't have it too tight, or when the door closes, it grabs the seal over here. And you know, when the door closes, it's all got to be flush against the seal, and then you have a drip rail, and then you have to put your striker and drill your holes in your door frame. So these doors look simple, but they're a tremendous amount of work. But they're a popular mod for us. So we always like to put these doors, this 36 by 80 door, we always like to put those between vents so we're not cutting into the vents. So wherever we put it, we just dodge vents. And we usually do the same with windows, as you can see there. So thanks for watching, and as always, ask questions if you got them. And have a good rest of your weekend or whatever day it ends up being when you watch this.